What is the best lantern in Dauntless? It's a question that surfaces in many forms, whether it's asking specifically about the use of a certain lantern or asking about what the best general lantern is. And that's the question we'll be tackling today. Hello everyone, I am Trevor, I go by TheMrTrails, and welcome to the channel. So the odds are that if you've been around in the Dauntless community for long, you've seen people ask these sort of questions, whether it be on a trial video, in a Discord server, or even Reddit perhaps. People will see that the Pangar lantern is being used in a Dauntless trial run and wonder why that is, especially when they've developed a preference for one of the other useful lanterns. Well, today we'll be taking a look at all of the lantern options to see why one might be more useful than another in certain situations. Before we get into it though, the majority of the minutes watched on the channel currently are coming from viewers who are not subscribed. And if you're one of them and you're enjoying the content that you're watching, consider subscribing to the channel. We're actually closing in on 5,000 subscribers at the moment. And if you enjoy the game of Dauntless, I post Dauntless content here usually twice per week, if not more. And if you think you are subscribed, double check to make sure that you are, as forgetting you're not subscribed is actually quite a common occurrence on this platform. So first up, we've got the Recruit Lantern. And you know what? I take back everything I may have said in the intro. The Recruit Lantern is obviously our best option, hands down every single time. I mean a non-stacking 50 health shield for the tap ability and a hold ability that lets you track the behemoth. This is obviously the lantern to use for Dauntless trial strategies. We don't even need to take a look at the other lanterns. We can end the video right here. Alright, in all seriousness though, the only thing the Recruit Lantern can boast about in terms of adding damage output to a build is being a permanent 1% increase to your critical chance when you're using the Tenacious Cell. Obviously, that's not a major thing that you could consider a boast, and it actually has an additional handicap in that it doesn't have a utility cell slot. We'll sort of be going in order of increasing usefulness here, so let's take a look at the Skarn Lantern next. The Skarn Lantern tap ability grants a 250 health shield for 6 seconds, and the hold ability surrounds the player with a rock tornado for 10 seconds and deals damage to behemoths when the player is close enough. So this doesn't even look that bad on the surface, especially since the lantern hold actually deals the second highest base damage in the game out of all of the lanterns in certain situations. And a 250 health shield is sometimes enough to sponge a hit entirely, leaving your health bar intact. But there's some serious drawbacks with the Skarn Lantern, the main one being that you have to wait until the end of the lantern hold's duration to be able to activate it again. This is only the case with 2 lanterns, the Skarn Lantern being one of them. And while a 250 health shield is actually a decent amount of shield to gain, it's only around for 6 seconds, which means it's not really worth even taking in a Skarn Tenacious build since it only adds 5% crit chance for that 6 seconds. Next up, we've got the Koshai Lantern, and the Koshai Lantern tap ability grants 10% lifesteal for 8 seconds, and the Koshai Lantern hold ability teleports the player a short distance, creating a small explosion once they've arrived at their destination. This unique hold ability actually has a couple of interesting tech options. The first of which is being able to escape a grab attack from the escalation bosses, effectively saving you from death. Another is when using the Ardent Cyclone special for sword, you can use the Koshai Lantern hold ability to cancel your special, say if the behemoth runs away from you for a while, or if you need it to dodge to avoid death. These uses make it a pretty interesting option, but it doesn't really do much for the damage output, and as such it's not really used in a majority of builds. Next up, we have the Broadside's Lantern, which is a reward you can earn through normal trials. The Broadside Lantern tap ability fires a cannonball at the behemoth, dealing 350 base damage, becoming 450 base damage, and a critical hit hit if the behemoth is airborne. This is a very unique effect and is the only instance in which an item damage type source can currently crit in the game. And the lantern hold ability drops a bomb that will explode after 1 second, which can interrupt behemoths. The Broadside's lantern deals the least amount of damage out of the lantern holds that deal damage, and when it's used, it's mostly as a tech option for repeaters and can sometimes be their only interrupting method. 4 down, 4 to go, and this is where we draw the line between the meta and the off-meta lanterns. So let's take a look at perhaps the least meta of these 4, the Embermane lantern. The Embermane lantern tap increases your attack speed by 25% for 8 seconds, and the hold ability summons a ball of fire that will explode and deal 850 damage after 5 seconds. The main downside to the Embermane lantern is the delay between when you perform the lantern hold and when the damage from the hold actually comes. 5 seconds is a really long time in a Dauntless fight, and the behemoth will often move out of the way of this explosion, whether it be because it wanted to move or because you continuously broke parts, causing it to move away from the explosion. That said, it can still find its uses and is usually used on the Frost Behemoth trials for more damage, or sometimes for builds on repeaters, axe, hammer, and sword, which can get away with having a lot of attack speed increases. For our next 2 lanterns, I would call it a tie between the 2 for what is generally more useful. The Drask lantern tap ability grants 30% increased damage for 6 seconds, and the hold ability deals 150 base damage multiple times as it passes through the behemoth. In some cases, this will make the Drask lantern the winner in terms of the amount of damage dealt, and can be more than 2,000 or even 3,000 damage in a single lantern hold. However, this is usually the case when we're talking about longer behemoths and doesn't always take the crown. And one of the downsides is having to aim the lantern hold properly, which doesn't always happen. On a behemoth such as Nasher, for instance, if you use your lantern hold from head to tail, it would deal a decent amount of damage, but if you use it from the side, this could be half or even less than half of that damage. Another of the downsides of the Drask lantern is that there's currently a bug that will sometimes lock you out of using the lantern hold for a few seconds and is obviously going to hinder its usefulness for a little while. Then we have the Shrike lantern, which for the tap ability will increase move speed by 40% for 6 seconds, and the hold ability will cast an area of effect for 15 seconds that gives players 15% movement speed and attack speed while they're inside of it. This is a fairly commonly used option for squad trials, as the effects of using multiple Shrike lantern holds will stack on top of each other for a maximum of plus 60% attack speed when all 4 players are using it. Usually this is too much attack speed though, so there will usually be 1 or 2 Shrike lanterns if they are involved. The main downside that we would see in the Shrike lantern is that the hold ability is the other one that you need to wait until it's over to be able to cast again, which is a problem when trying to run Conduit. Since Conduit only lasts for 10 seconds and the Shrike lantern lasts for 15 seconds, this can bring your uptime for the attack speed from Conduit down to only 66% of the time, where other lanterns would be 100% of the time. Additionally, you gain no benefit out of using the Aether Drive tonic with a Shrike lantern, which means that you'll have to run a Pylon, Wounding, or Stagger tonic while using it. And our final lantern is the Pangar lantern, which would be considered to be the dominant Trials lantern and is usually what is used for solo runs and for 2 or 3 players in a squad. Part of this is because the hold ability does the most base damage out of all of the lanterns at 960, aside for some of those cases against longer behemoths in which the Drask lantern can deal more damage. This 960 damage is dealt over a period of 12 seconds, but you don't have to wait for the prior hold durations to complete for you to be able to cast it again. Unlike with the Embermane lantern, this damage comes right away, starting to be dealt as soon as you've activated the ability. Another reason that the Pangar lantern is the go-to is because of how easily it can trigger the Frost Elemental effect, usually referred to as a Frost proc. After enough frost damage has been dealt to a behemoth, it will become chilled and will move more slowly for a decent amount of time. The main usefulness that this effect of it would have is extending the amount of time that the Overpower cell is active for. As long as the behemoth is in the animation for its part break, stagger, interrupt, or shock proc, the Overpower cell will be active, and slowing the behemoth down means that you'll have that massive 60% damage source available to you for longer. In some cases, this extra duration of the Overpower windows can be the difference between stun locking the behemoth and the behemoth being able to get off an attack or two. Another of the less obvious benefits of using the Pangar lantern is the effective range of it. The area of effect is approximately a 10 to 13 meter radius around where the player initially casts it. As long as the behemoth is anywhere within this radius, the behemoth will actually be taking the full damage from the lantern hold. Whether it's right in the middle of it or only the tip of its tail is inside the area of effect region, the Pangar lantern will still deal 100% of its damage. The only thing that having one part in the area would affect is the speed of the frost proc, which will happen more quickly the more parts that are hit by the Pangar effect. And newer players will often underestimate the Pangar lantern because of the tap ability, which restores 25% of the player's stamina. They will think that the Embermane or Drask lantern would automatically be the better option for damage because of their tap abilities are damage focused. But in many cases, the Pangar lantern hold makes up for the damage loss here and then some. But that's not to say that the Pangar lantern is always the best option. As I've already detailed, there are times that the Drask, Embermane, and Shrike lanterns are more useful for damage output. But against the majority of behemoths, the Pangar lantern is the best option for maximizing damage output in the Dauntless meta. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, consider leaving a like on the video. And if you enjoy Dauntless content and are not subscribed already, consider subscribing to the channel. Here I post Dauntless content every week. And to stay up to date with my content in the best way, consider joining the Discord server linked in the description. I manually make a post every time I upload a video or start up a hangout on Twitch. And I've been Trevor, I go by TheMrTrails, and I will catch you guys next time.